So I think we are going to start, and I like to start with this slide because it tells you a little bit about me and a little bit about where I'm coming from. This is, some years ago, I was asked by a magazine to submit a photo of me as a child, and I said, is it okay if I draw a picture of myself instead? And they said, sure, go ahead, knock yourself out. So I have this picture of me. I'm on my bed, I'm 9 years old, and I am reading the big book of horrible rare diseases. And I'm surrounded by these other books, everything you always wanted to know about scurvy, but were afraid to ask, diseases of the tropics, a child's garden of maladies, when I was a kid growing up in Brooklyn, for some reason, lockjaw figured very highly in our childhood imaginations as something you did not want to get. And so lockjaw was one of my phobia diseases. But the main inspiration for all of this was probably the book that we had in our house every year of my growing up, the Merck Manual. And when I was a child, most of it was way beyond my reading comprehension abilities, but I did know what symptoms and signs were. And I also knew that leprosy was very rare in Brooklyn, but somehow I thought, well, that doesn't mean, rare doesn't mean impossible. So yeah, anyway, this is, oops. This is supposed to advance, and it's not. Hello. Oh, there it goes. Okay. This is a picture of me. A cartoonist friend of mine said, she was looking at it, she said, is that your mother? And I said, no, that's me. I'm 11. You know, this is the 1960s, the swinging 60s, and it's just like, I just got off boat from Russia. I do not know this country. I do not. So anyway, that tells you a little bit about where I'm coming from. I'm going to show you a few cartoons. This is Pigeon Little. The sky is falling. The sky is, oh, look, part of a bagel. This is a kind of recent one. This is the panic button, the high anxiety, but I'm handling it button, the icky feeling button, and everything is okay for now button. This is a billboard gag. Injured, I told you so, but you didn't listen. Called 1-800-BOOHOO. Live, love, laugh. Why? You know? This is the Holy Trinity.
Holy Trinity.
Yeah. You know, I love vegetables, but without butter and salt, what am I eating? This is like nothing. This is just a sort of declension, antiques, collectibles, bric-a-brac, and garbage. Oops. This is, I still remember when I was a kid not understanding that tongue was actually tongue. Yeah, well, it's funny, you know, how you get these like weird misconceptions. I have never been to Rancho, Mirage, and until very recently, I thought it was a spa. And I thought, like, why am I going to go to a spa and people are all going to be in bathrobes, walking around, going from massage to massage and mud baths, and I'm going to be showing my cartoons. I don't really. But then again, until recently, I thought Malibu is in Hawaii. So this is Hokey Pokey. Put his whole self in 1930. Took his whole self out in 2027. Okay. And this is a lot of times people ask me, where do you get your ideas for cartoons? And this particular cartoon actually did come directly from life. When one of my kids was about 16 years old, she was doing her homework, in the living room, and there was a boombox and some hip-hop music, and I just wanted to see if she was paying attention. So I did this little kind of dance, and she looked up and she said, "Mom, stop, you're hurting me." And so that actually became a cartoon. This is Insomnia Jeopardy. Ways in which people have wronged me, strange noises, diseases I probably have, money troubles, why did I say or do that, and ideas for a screenplay. This is the not in the mood for human interaction line, which happens a lot in the grocery store. It seems to bring that out in me. I just don't want to talk to anybody. Banned children's books. What is a burger? Why does Nana look like that? And the Earth is just a tiny dot. Yes, it is. This is a desk joke. Too early to begin working on and too late to do anything about, which pretty much sums it all up for me. You know, I'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but it's interesting. One of the things about drawing cartoons for magazines is that there are certain genres for cartoons, and I think of this as a desk joke, even though nobody has in and out boxes anymore. But they still, that trope still persists. You know, there's all these tropes. There's the tunnel of love joke, the end of the world guy, tombstone jokes, and I love all of them. I think they're kind of, or almost all of them, I've never done a successful desert island joke, but I hope to someday. And then, of course, you're inventing them. This is meet and greet and ingest and detest and freak out and sneak out, which is pretty much how I feel at every party. This is bad friend cards. This is put off answering friends' email and then deleted it. Made up excuse for avoiding lunch with friend, forgot friend's child's name, and gave sweater hand knit. They probably gave themselves like blindness and arthritis by knitting it, and you hated it, and you gave it to Goodwill. That's terrible. It's really terrible. This is, we have flour, sugar, coffee, tea, and microplastics. This is the guy who didn't know his cholesterol, his BMI, his net worth, his IQ, his credit score, his astrological sign, or his ancestry. Yep. A pie chart genre gag, 56% can't do the math and 54% won't do the math. This is the woman without a core, who would be me. I don't think a core actually exists, and good for you if you've got a good one. Yay. This is In a Just World. I have to say I'm the first person to actually get the word bitch in a cartoon. I don't know if that's like good or bad, but this is a dunce cap and a bitch cap. This is a, yeah. I'm going to skip this one. The little engine that coulda, woulda, shoulda. I knew I could, so why didn't I? This is, you know, I grew up in Brooklyn and always lived in the city. We moved out of New York to raise our family. We moved out to Connecticut, and for the first time in my life, I had a yard, which I just did not understand at all. And, you know, every once in a while, I'd go out of the house and I would stand in the yard, and it would just be like this mystery. So I'd say hello to grass. What the hell is mulch? Because my husband, who's from Minnesota, would sometimes be talking about mulch, like I knew what he was talking about. Rake or hoe, which is which? No, you don't want a pool. And so you're outside. Now what? And this cartoon really did come from something my husband said to me. He saw me, you know, we have like an area in the front, which I guess is called the front yard, and then an area of grass in the back, which is called the backyard. And I don't really know what the point of the backyard is, but one time I thought I should go out and just look at it. And So I was standing out there, and my husband said he saw me standing out there, and it was so weird. He said it looked like a deer had wandered into Saks. This is, okay, so this is the very first cartoon that I ever sold to the New Yorker. And this was in April of 1978, so it was, back when people did their cartoons on stones. And, it was before the invention of paper, and, I had to take a horse-drawn cart from the Upper West Side down to the New Yorker offices. But anyway, I never really thought I would be a cartoonist for the New Yorker. That was not my goal. My dream, I graduated from Rhode Island School of Design. I was a painting major in 1977. But I always drew cartoons from the time I was little. I always loved to draw, always drew, never thought about doing anything else. But I also like to write, more drawing than the writing, but I like both of them. And cartooning, you could do both. And I also liked things that made me laugh. I loved Mad Magazine, I loved looking at cartoons, and I loved making things that made me laugh or made friends laugh, not that I had friends, but made other people laugh. And when I got out, so I drew cartoons before I went to art school and was a painting major. And then by the time I was in my junior and senior year, I was drawing cartoons sort of on the sly for myself. And when I got out of college, I started taking around a portfolio. And I was doing cartoons for the National Lampoon and for the Village Voice. And that was my dream, to be a cartoonist for the Village Voice, because Mark Allen Stamety and Jules Pfeiffer and Stan Mack did cartoons for them, and their work was very personal, very idiosyncratic. They had 3 very different styles of cartoons. They were not panels with a caption underneath them. They were episodic. They were storytellers. And then in April of 1978, I thought, well, I should try the New Yorker. They're not going to take anything, but why not try them? My parents subscribed. I grew up with it, so I dropped off a portfolio of about 60 cartoons. I had no idea really what I was doing. I was 23 and went back the next week to pick up the portfolio, and there was a note from Lee Lorenz, who was the art editor at the time, to come back and see him, which was completely not in my script how this was going to go. But I thought, okay, I'll go. And he said that they were buying this cartoon, which was really shocking to me because it was possibly the most personal of all of the cartoons that I was submitting. This is the kind of thing that when I'm bored or by myself and I just want to, make myself laugh, this is the kind of thing I'll just make up like chant, or like if you're in class and it's an unusual day where you have a friend and it's like very boring and some teacher is talking about like the y-axis or the x-axis or whatever, and you just draw some little shape and then you give it a name and then maybe you define it and you make each other laugh, and then the teacher gets mad at you or whatever. So the fact that they bought this one was a real shockaroo, and he told me to start coming back in person. And every week with a group of cartoons. And that is essentially what I have been doing since then, which is now close to 47 years, which is insane. Except that now there's no more in-person meetings. It's all, electronic. It's all email. But when this cartoon ran, a lot of people got very, very, very upset, including some of the older artists who hated me. I wasn't quite aware of it at the time. I knew that they didn't like me because nobody talked to me, and that was okay with me because they were scary. They were like all men, and they were old, and they all seemed to know each other, and I just thought, well, that's fine. Don't talk to me because I don't want to talk to you either. But Lee Lorenz told me later that when my stuff first started running, one of them asked, do you owe her family money? This is another very early cartoon. It's in a quandary. The voice of reason. It's not such a big thing. Just put the galoshes on. The voice of conscience. Mom will be mad if you don't put them on. The voice of practicality. It's raining. Why don't you just wear them? And the voice of Binky. Toss them out the window. You know. And this cartoon, I like to show this because, well, here's the thing. So I'd never had a mailbox like this before, ever. I have one now, you know, not to brag. And there was no internet to look them up. So, you know, when you first go in, you submit your drawings as sketches. And when I was meeting with Lee, he pulled out the sketch. And it was very much like this, except that the flag on the side was sticking out perpendicularly from the door of the mailbox. And Lee said to me, what is this thing? And I said, that's the handle. You know, that's how you open up the mailbox. And he looked at me and I had never had a mailbox. I grew up in an apartment house, you know, and only lived in apartment houses, so I didn't know. And he redrew the mailbox for me and explained the mechanics of the mailbox, and that's a flag. And now that I have one of these, every time I put that flag up, it's like, look at me go. I am so comfortable with this now. It's just second nature, you know. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the process of submitting. This is the freelance life. Honey, I'm still home. This is where I work. This is my desk. I still do my work on paper for the New Yorker, although for other projects I mostly draw on my iPad. But yeah, I draw here. And as I said, it's a weekly art meeting, and all the cartoonists, there's about 40 cartoonists that are sort of more or less regulars, and we each submit what has been called since time immemorial a batch. And that could be 5 cartoons, it could be 10 cartoons. My number that I shoot for is usually 6 or 7. And we send them, at this point, we don't go in person, as I said, we send them through cyberspace, and that is an actual photograph of cartoons going through cyberspace. And we send them to the cartoon editor at the New Yorker, and then there's an art meeting. And the art meeting takes place once a week where they do the cartoon buys, and it is, I've never been to one, but I imagine it looks a lot like this. We see a picture of David Remnick and Emma Allen, and most of it is this. Because when you think about it, there's 40 regular people, let's just say 10 cartoons. That's 400 from the regular people, and then about 1,000 come in every week. So you have 1,400 cartoons that they have to go through, and they buy maybe 15 or 20. So there's no guarantees of any of this. This is all completely done on spec. I've never earned a weekly kind of salary. That just doesn't work that way. I often think about something that Linda Barry once said about cartooning, that it is a very rickety profession, and it is. But for those of us who do this, there's not really a lot of other options, you know. And in fact, when people ask me, you know, my kid wants to be a cartoonist, what kind of advice, I always say, you know, if they can do anything else, they should do that thing, you know, not this, because this is really, you have to be fairly, you know, desperate. You're backed into a corner. And this is, then there's a ton of rejects. This is where my rejects go. And that brings us to this book that I wrote about my parents, which was, you know, a very unexpected response that apparently a lot of people had been going through or still are going through, the experience of caring for their aging parents, and not when they're just like more or less old, but when they're like more old. And this was something that nobody really told me about, and as an only child, it pretty much fell to me. This is me with my parents. Again, this is the 1960s, but it's really, in my parents' world, 1938. They never really, they were teachers, and that was sort of how they dressed. They wore this to the beach, I have pictures of my parents at the beach, at Brighton Beach, and they're dressed kind of like this. So this is a book that I wrote about this experience, which, is very personal. So this is The Wheel of Doom. These are stories, literally, I made none of these stories up. These are all stories I heard growing up, repeatedly growing up. Friend's husband killed by falling flower pot. The good news is that she got this settlement, and now she bought some co-op on Fifth Avenue. That was the other part of the story. Okay, friend nearly blinded by mascara causing infection. Friend who traveled too much, jaundice. A rash, then dead. A headache, then dead. A lump, then dead. He was too happy. He jumped off a chair and broke his metatarsal. I swear I was the only 6-year-old in Brooklyn who knew what a metatarsal was. Guy who almost died after playing the oboe. You wonder, what is the connection between oboe playing and death? My mother and her brother, who was a jazz trumpet player, this oboe playing person was a friend of my uncle's. Apparently, it's so hard to play the oboe and to get a note out of the oboe that, all that pressure. One day he just woke up, and I still remember he was overhearing this. It stayed with me a lifetime. He was bleeding from every pore. A friend's son killed by baseball. Everything was a disaster. You could get a cold in your kidneys. My mother's best friend, Beatrice Jacobson, she sat on the ground. It was a Girl Scout camp, which was already fault. She should never have gone to this Girl Scout camp, because that's already, you're taking a chance. But she sat directly on the ground. She caught a cold in her kidneys, and she died. Water in the ear, getting water in your ear. You might as well kill yourself. Because the water gets in your head, it goes into your brain, you die. I never swam without a bathing cap until I was 17. You're like 14, 15 years old, you're already self-conscious enough. Do you know what I looked like in a bathing suit with a bathing cap on my head? It was just not good. But I was afraid to swim without it. Anyway, despite all of this, my parents and I never really discussed death. We never discussed, because they were, at this point, I was living in Connecticut with my family and my 2 kids and my husband, and they were living in their apartment, the same one where I grew up. And so this is a typical conversation. So, do you guys ever think about things? What kinds of things? Things, plans. I have no idea what you guys want. Oh, sorry. Let's say something happened. Am I the only sane person here? You know what? Never mind. Que sera, sera. Later that same day, phew, phew, phew. We were all glad to have, I visited them for the first time in years at their apartment in Brooklyn where I grew up. And what I noticed first was the level of grime. It's not ordinary dust or a greasy stovetop that hasn't been cleaned in a week or two. It's more of a coating. It's something that happens when people haven't cleaned in a really long time. One thing that my mother always told me when I was growing up was, you have to dust. If you don't dust, the dust gets into all the interstices of the furniture and it breaks it all apart. And it was clear that she had stopped worrying about that. But what do? If you pick up a sponge and start cleaning, it will not necessarily be perceived as helpful. And the person you're trying to help might even feel insulted or embarrassed. And let's, put that down, leave that alone, don't touch that, Daddy and I are fine. I was not great as a caretaker, and they were not great at being taken care of. By 2002, they were 90. It was hard not to notice that every time I came to see them, the grime had grown thicker, the piles of magazines and junk mail had grown larger, and they themselves had grown frailer. I could see that they were slowly leaving the sphere of TV commercial old age. This is like when you see some guy with like, you know, silver hair, and he's like canoeing. This is not what I'm talking about. And moving into that part of old age that was scarier, harder to talk about, and not a part of this culture. And here's this like nitwit scientist saying extend human lifespan to 140. I bet dollars to donuts that this person has never taken care of people who are like over 80, or you know, just has no experience with it, and they somehow imagine that you're going to be like canoeing into the sunset. This does not happen. You know, something was coming down the pike. I'm going to, just because I know we're moving. All right, here's what I used to think happened at the end. One day, this is well, my parents went to assisted living, and anyway, this is what I used to think happened at the end. One day, old Mrs. McGillicuddy felt unwell, and she took to her bed. She stayed there for about 3 or 4 weeks, growing weaker day by day. One night, she developed something called a death rattle, and soon after that, she died. The end. Rest in peace, old Mrs. McGillicuddy. And this was not how it went down with my parents, and it's not how it happens with most people. And so at this point, my parents, I did get them out of their apartment and into an assisted living place that was near me. That was lovely. They didn't like it. My father called it a hellhole. But you know, they could not be in their apartment anymore. My father was leaving the stove on, and it was not good. My mother was falling. And after my father died, my mother was 97 at this point, and she was starting to have probably like mini strokes. And for the most part, she was completely coherent. She would ask me very specific questions about my kids, but then she would slip into these crazy stories, and I started writing them down. And this one was Dead Dad. Your father died before you were born, when I was pregnant with you. My father, Harry, said he would buy me a house and he would live with us and babysit you while I was at work. And I said, Mom, that's not true. Yes, it is, and I should know. This one is ass full of buckshot. There was a break-in at the place. In the book, I call this assisted living place the place. All the men were moved over to the women's side. I shot the intruder with my BB gun. I gave him an ass full of buckshot. I'd like to stand him on a stage, pull down his pants, and take out the pellets one by one in front of everybody. Unusual adoption. Did I ever tell you about how the Miltons got Paula? Now, I knew this story, but it was not this story. They went out shopping, and when they got back to their car, there was a grocery bag leaning against the wheel, and inside the bag was a baby. I was on a launch. What? I was on a launch, and a woman who was naked down to her pupik, that's belly button for those of you who don't know Yiddish, got stabbed in her heart by a flying swordfish. A terrible way to die. And I said, maybe you dreamed it. No, I was right there. And then we were into a different phase of this when my mother stopped talking pretty much. And as I said, she was 97. She had other health problems. And my father had passed away 2 years before. And she slept. She pretty much slept. She wasn't eating very much. She wasn't drinking very much. And I would come and visit her. And she had 24-hour care, so she had somebody there. And this person would say, your mother had a little ginger ale, or she, you know, ate a little bit of scrambled eggs, but mostly it was this. And I did not know what to do, and I just kind of would visit, and I drew her. And you know, this part began in June of 2009. We're in August. We're in September. And finally, at the end of September in 2009, my mother passed away. It was very, very fast. They called me, I drove down. It took me about 10 minutes to get there, but she had passed. And then, you know, as any of you who have been through this process know, all this machinery starts happening. Then head nurse comes in, and then another nurse, and then the helper, and then they have to take all the medicines out. But I was left alone with my mother, her body, for half an hour while all this other stuff. And so I did what I do when I don't know what else to do, and I drew her. I hadn't, of course, planned on it. I wish that at the end of life, when things were truly done, there was something to look forward to, something more pleasure-oriented, perhaps opium or heroin. So you became addicted, so what? All you can eat ice cream parlors for the extremely aged, big art picture books, music, extreme palliative care for when you've had it with everything else, the x-rays, the MRIs, the boring food, and the pills that don't do anything at all. Would that be so bad? And, you know, I mean, this book is from now, I guess 10 years ago, and more I feel this way. It's, you know, but I think that there are some developments that show that things are starting to change, maybe as we baby boomers get into this part. So anyway, this is another book that I wrote a couple of years after that. This is Going into Town, a love letter to New York. It's funny, my husband says that my great love affair in life is with New York City, and that is probably true. I've never been anywhere that is like that or that I love as much. You know, I love everything. I love, it's just, anyway, this is a picture of me. This is me with my mother. This is my first subway ride. I love all the signs, buy tokens at your leisure, not somebody else's leisure, your leisure. I think I'm wearing like 7 sweaters under that coat. You know, it looks like my head is about to like pop off into space. But you can see my mother, she's wearing like, I don't know, orthopedic shoes or something. And so this book really the book about New York came from a book that I had written for my daughter before she went off to school in Manhattan. It was a little kind of stapled together zine sort of book I made, and it had stuff in it about like subways and about how Fifth Avenue divides the West Side from the East Side, and it was stuff that like she just didn't know. Like I remember having this conversation. Well, here's a picture. This is when I took her into the city when she was about 10 or 11. It was so surprising to me. She looked at the fire escapes and she said, "Mom, what are all those West Side Story things?" And it was so funny because I didn't know that she knew that very famous graphic on the cover of, you know, the music for, you know, West Side Story with the fire escape. But somehow that image must be so much part of the culture, that she somehow knew it, even though it wasn't in our house. But she called them West Side Story things. But when she was going off to college, you know, as I said, we lived in suburban Connecticut, and I was telling her how Manhattan, for the most part, is laid out like a grid. And so if you wanted to walk from like 50th Street to 53rd Street, it's very easy. You just walk up 3 blocks. And she actually said to me, "What's a block?" And so that's why I made this book. Oh, yes. There's a lot in the book about why I love New York. The more nondescript your street is, the greater chance you have of making your own discoveries. I mean, a store that just sells ribbon, like 2 solid giant floors of ribbons. It's like the greatest things, and everything is like, half of it is dusty, it hasn't been touched since like 1959. It's just fantastic. For some reason, I've always preferred cities to nature. I'm interested in the person-made. I like to watch and eavesdrop on people, and I really like density of visual information. I like I like that everywhere you look in New York, there's a fur store here, and above there's an ice skating. There's 3 levels: Persiteria, air conditioning repair, and the ventriloquism school on the top. And it's still like that. Yes, COVID, New York took a hit from COVID, but it's still, especially Midtown, which a lot of people hate, but I don't. And there's also like these weird, this to me is the flora and fauna of New York. These standpipes. And they're very anthropomorphic to me. Like this fancy one with the red and the I think of her as Trixie. She's very sassy, She's definitely sex positive. And then there's like this doofus in the upper right-hand corner, and he's like, do, 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 nobody sees me. And then this lower right-hand corner, they're fighting. They're having like, I don't want to talk to you. Like, what did I do? What did I do? You know what you did. You know. So, this is, and this is another book that I did. This is my most recent one, I Must Be Dreaming. I have always been interested in dreams because these stories just unfold themselves, and they are so preposterous and odd and very unpredictable. And so I wound up doing a book about dreams. This was the first one, and I wasn't planning on it. I had started to play around with posting things to Instagram and illustrating these dreams, and this was a dream, the first one that I illustrated. My mother and her friend, a man named Bissell, had come into, and Bissell, maybe there's a drugstore named Bissell's in my town, had come into possession of O.J. Simpson's famous glove. This Bissell guy telephoned her to tell her of his great business idea. We can rent it out for parties. And he said, as a matter of fact, I'm wearing it right now. And my mother had a different opinion. That glove belongs in a safety deposit box. This is a dream about Elizabeth Taylor. Who knows why? I learned that Elizabeth Taylor always traveled with her own stove when she went on tour. Amazingly, it looked exactly like the tiny stove in my apartment in New York. If you've ever lived, any of you guys have ever lived in a small apartment in the city and you had a galley kitchen, these kind of old stoves that are like a regular stove, except they're maybe 2/3 the size of one. They're just really weird and little. So anyway, she always in my dream. And this slide, this is, and the reason why there's this scrawl on it, and I'll tell you the story of this. Okay, so I dreamed I was married to Danny DeVito. I like Danny DeVito. He's hilarious, but he's not someone I think about very often. In my dream, he lay with his head in my lap, gazing up at me with adoration, and I thought, I'm not in love with him, but it's nice to be adored, so maybe this will work out. So anyway, here's what happened. This scrawl is not in the book. I was on a publicity tour for this book, and I was going to do an interview at a radio station in New York, and the person on before me was Danny DeVito. And his people and my person started talking, and hey, Danny DeVito is in my book, and showed him the cartoon, and he was so gracious and so great, and we hugged, and he just loved it, and he signed it, oh so nice, love, Danny DeVito. So, it was just like, I can't believe this. This is like the greatest day of my life. And this cartoon, I became a cartoonist. I drew this up. This was in the New Yorker. Last night, I dreamed about shopping for bed slippers. I tried on some big fluffy ones, but I didn't like them. Then I tried on a pair of cute green slippers, which I realized could double as penny loafers. But I would have to put insoles in them because they had no arch support. And the store did not sell arch support insoles, but I bought them anyway. My credit card was square rather than rectangular, and it had a picture of a wheat field on it. The lady wasn't sure the machine would take it, but it did. When the machine took the card, it made a happy little chime. Ding! The end. Oops. And this is gross, but I'm going to read it anyway. This is to save humanity. There was a water shortage on Earth, but I had a genetic defect where I made tons of saliva. I kept people alive by drooling into their mouths. Everyone was grossed out, but it was either take my drool or die. And this is like the last part of this. Periodically I get obsessed with some sort of craft type of thing. And I love, cartooning is a very rickety profession. And if you only care about money, it's probably not what you should be doing. But on the other hand, I get to sort of see whether the kind of drawing I do and my ideas can be applied to other mediums. And I've always loved Pisanki eggs. And I don't know if you guys know what Pisanki eggs are. They're the Ukrainian Easter eggs. And they're not painted. It's a wax resist technique. So you have a regular chicken egg, and you are drawing these very complex designs on the egg with wax, melted wax, and then you dip the egg into the dye. So where the wax is, the dye doesn't go. So it's a kind of resist technique like batik. You have to learn to think in the negative, which comes very easily to me. So I've made hundreds of these, and partly because as I started doing it, I learned the technique, I learned the traditional methods, but I could apply it worked well with my cartoon style. Here are some more, there's just all kinds more, Cab Calloway and ones that are based on all sorts of ridiculous things. Good and Plenty Drops, the old box, which I love. It's pink and black and white. I hate the new box. We don't need to talk about that. Guy with a Fez. It's just so much fun to see how they come out, how they work out. We have Metamorphosis. This is Rock, Paper, Scissors. And I think there's something also about drawing in the round that I find very appealing. Here's some more. And this is, I also got very involved with rug hooking. This rug is about 14 inches by maybe 20 inches, something like that, 22 inches. And I love that. Again, it's working with color, and I love, love, love working with color. And this is a very large rug that I did. This was about my father. It's kind of a little tribute to him and his favorite. He would have these, he retired early, and every day he would take everything out of the refrigerator because he didn't know what he wanted, and he liked to just kind of array it. And it would drive my mother absolutely bananas. Like, George, why do you have to take everything out of the refrigerator? Elizabeth, I just don't want to look. So, I don't know. This is another one. I like the way cans look. I like labels. And again, it's color. Color is what I love. And this, I'm going to show you a couple of things here. We're running out of time, so I'll go fast. I've done 2 embroidery covers for the New Yorker. This is one. This is Motherboard. It was for the Mother's Day and the tech issue. And of course, what else could it be but a motherboard? This is one I did during COVID, and I like incorporating the design that's on the fabric. This was another a cover for the New Yorker I did during COVID. This, you can see the fabric. This is Insomnia. This is embroidery, hand embroidery, by the way. Plants. Oh, 26 seconds. Oh my God. Okay. This is an undersea diver. This is a close-up. Oh no. Why is this not? There you go. His suit. 8 seconds. Okay. Oh no. It's not my fault. Okay. More. I've gotten into putting the beads in. And come on. Okay. Oh no. Okay. Oh, this is my okay. This is good. We could maybe end on this note. It's my it's one of my favorite quotes ever. When a writer is born into a family, the family is finished. And I think that would be a good note to end on.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.